next,
Corners Consulting.
Four Corners Consultant.
Commissioner,
Good evening.
how are you?
Good
sir?
evening.
Doing good. All right, thanks for allowing me to present. Okay. All right, with your support, we are continuing to make
Please identify yourself, sir.
Commissioner.
Garrett Duquesne, Commissioner of the Department of Community Development and Conservation.
Look at that, that's a long title.
And he's
All right.
memorized it.
So with your support, we're continuing to make great progress on Four Corners. And when I refer to Four Corners, we're talking about the 2019 Town Board adopted Four Corners redevelopment plan, which is the town's vision for mixed-use redevelopment in the vicinity of Four Corners. And of course, last year, the town of Greenburgh was awarded a Department of State Smart Growth Grant, the amount of $135,000, and with a $15,000 town match, which is a total budget of $150,000. And what that grant will do is we'll fund the services for the town to hire a planning consultant that will assist with public outreach, complete environmental studies that support redevelopment proposals at Four Corners, and work with the Four Corners Steering Committee and prepare zoning regulations for the town board approval, which will enable redevelopment proposals. I'm sure you've heard of the term, build it and they will come. In our world, it's zone for it, and we shall see if anyone comes. Okay, so I mentioned the Four Corners Steering Committee. We've got 12 very engaged members, and that's going great. So I worked closely with the Four Corners Steering Committee on a request for proposals for this planning consultant. And with town board authorization, on October 24th last year, we issued the RFP, and that was broadly put out in the world there on the New York State Contract Reporter, the Town of Greenburgh website, and on the Journal News.
Garrett, when you say we, who worked on that?
So that's through my
The steering committee.
department in strong conjunction with the Four Corners Steering Committee.
Correct, okay.
Work with them every step of the way. So I was pleased to note that we received 6 strong proposals from planning firms that has very much interested in doing the work. And the Four Corners Steering Committee met on December 2nd at one of their meetings and reviewed all 6 of the proposals, and we discussed them. And from that meeting, the Four Corners Steering Committee had identified 3 highly preferred of the 6. So we call that shortlisting the firms down to 3. What we then decided, the committee decided to host those three planning firms and did interviews. That occurred on December 9th. Following those interviews, we discussed them internally, and I asked the committee to go back and not just focus solely on the interviews, but go back to the RFPs, review them again, think about the discussions that we had amongst ourselves with the firms. And from there, I asked the Four Corners Steering Committee members to email me individually and identify their notes on the firms and to see if members had a strong preference for one particular firm. So from there, it became obvious that there were 2 clear candidates, and from that point, we made the recommendation to the town board to interview those 2 candidates, which you did, and thank you for that. That occurred on January 14th, an executive session. I'm here tonight to focus on one candidate, and that's BFJ. BFJ presented exceptionally well at the Four Corners Steering Committee interviews, as well as the town board interviews, which you can speak to if you like. That was my impression. BFJ has direct and recent Department of State Smart Growth Grant implementation experience. They worked on Glen Cove's comprehensive plan through this very program, so I feel confident they know the ins and outs, and that's a very strong attribute in my opinion.
Is this the only, help me remember, is this the only vendor or supplier that had experience working with these type of grants?
Of the 3 shortlisted, I believe so.
Okay.
And just if you would take a moment to let people know, the members of the Four Corners Committee have broad range of experience, architectural, engineering, in their different careers and planning. So if you this is a very comprehensive group with very comprehensive aggregate knowledge in assessing these candidates.
Yeah, I need to say no more. That's absolutely correct. We have a vast array of talents on the committee, for sure. BFJ's RFP submission itself was excellent, and it identified much local relevant planning experience, particularly with redevelopment proposals, zoning enactments, which is exactly what this grant is looking to fund. And those referrals were often local: New Rochelle, Port Chester, I believe Scarsdale for sure. And BFJ has some staff that live very locally in the town of Greenburgh,
That's helpful.
one of the villages. 6 of the 9 Four Corners Steering Committee members of the 12 had clear preferences for one firm, and that was BFJ. The 3 members that didn't have a strong preference for one of the firms were kind of torn. They felt we had 3 strong candidates, which is a fact. I personally have a strong level of confidence that BFJ will perform excellent if chosen by the town board. And if the town board's supportive of the selection of BFJ, the next steps would be for me to reach out and obtain a draft contract from them consistent with the RFP and all the components of the grant. And then, if that's the case, I would look to have that ready for the February 12th town board meeting for approval. And if all that goes well, I'm very excited and look forward to working with the firm and working with the Four Corners Steering Committee.
Could I just ask you a couple quick, because we started talking about the mixed-use development, probably, what is it, like 5-10 years ago?
Yes.
And under, say, best-case scenarios, they'll come up with a report, say, by the end of the year. Then, and, they're going to be doing some seeker, when we spoke this morning, they're going to be doing some seeker, now. So then, let's say they say, okay, we're recommending mixed-use, zoning. Then, once they make the recommendation, could you give us sort of like a best-case scenario, what the timeline is, what would be the next steps after that?
If the kickoff with the consultant, let's say, were to occur in March, I think realistically we're looking at a 12 to 14 month period of their work, which will culminate in zoning ordinance language that is approvable for the town board. So we're really into first or second quarter 2026. Having said that, while that process is unfolding, there's going to be significant outreach to the public, to existing owners in the area. And I actually thought about this last night. If the town board recalls, when we were envisioning the zoning district that enabled Regeneron's subsequent development, we had the benefit of Regeneron as an interested party in that 100 acres. And while the town, through the comprehensive plan, had a great vision for what that area should be, which is essentially a cluster of research and development, it was very valuable to have an interested party enter into the equation so that we can get a good understanding for what their needs would be. And while the zoning that was created wasn't, just tailored solely for them, it was very valuable to, understand the types of public benefits, whether it's open space preservation or density bonuses for structured parking, that were great components for the zoning. So in this instance, I guess the reason I'm giving this example is while we're in this 12 to 14 month period, it is very much my hope that anyone that has interest in the redevelopment and believes in the redevelopment concept, whether that's existing owners or some other developers that want to partner with existing owners or just some other developers, that do enter the equation and talk about some of the hurdles and some of the challenges and some of their ambitions.
And we've had meetings, you and me, with potential developers in the past year, people who and we've shown them the property, and we basically said, this is a possibility, but that doesn't mean that, they may, if they actually have the rezoning, that they might be more receptive. But I'm sort of wondering if, say, in February of next year, the report comes up with language, once the language, say Joe drafts the language in March of next year, and then it goes to the town board, how long from the time we have a public hearing would it take for the zoning changes to be made? Does it have to go to, do we have to do more seeker? Does it go
Right.
more hearings? Is it like another 2-year process just to get the zoning change?
Great news, you will not have to draft anything, the consultant will do it.
I appreciate that.
Maybe a quick review would be great. No, so the reason I gave that example is, let's say we're a year out and we're, in the final stages of preparing the zoning ordinance. We'll have some sense if there's developer interest, property owner interest. But once the zoning is in place, let's say second quarter 2026, really then someone could submit a site plan application. And much as you've mentioned before, in all likelihood, we're not going to get a proposal for all 4 corners or even multiple corners. In all likelihood, someone will identify one of the corners. And I guess a semi-realistic goal would be that we would have, the town would receive some interest and perhaps receive a concrete proposal in the year 2026. Now that is, zoning's in place, that's a site plan approval. And so I guess that would be a time frame. Could conceivably, as early as 2026, receive a concrete proposal that town board and planning board could vet, and if it's consistent with the zoning,
No, it'll take about 2 years or something before they
yeah,
construct.
and then maybe someone's breaking ground in 2027, I think would be a
Best
kind of
case.
a best case scenario.
Another issue is, will the consultant be looking at, the
Slushing.
flooding and the traffic issues? Because that's been something that we've always talked about, and I know you've been working on the flood mitigation studies as well.
Yeah, flooding, traffic, water, sewer,
Soup to nuts?
Parking.
yes.
The flooding, could you just give us an update on that, the flooding study, because we discussed that a couple months ago.
It might be helpful if we just actually first finalize the selection of the vendor.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have any problem. I think it's good.
I think
Well, that's
it would
what
be
we're here
appropriate. I think we could now, disclose that when we interviewed the 2 finalists that were submitted to us by the steering committee, I believe the board was supportive of BFJ as well. At least that's my recollection.
And both of the finalists were outstanding,
They were both really fantastic.
Yeah.
It's, like Garrett said, early on in the process, through the steering committee's meetings, you really can't go wrong, right? You can't go wrong with either one, but there were some features of BFJ, particularly in how they would be able to present their findings to the public, that gave them the edge, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, they're both very qualified, and we were hard pressed to come to that conclusion.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Which shows the work of the steering committee, because they put forward 2 very good potential consultants for this project.
Thank you,
But we also have to be mindful
steering
that
committee.
in some respects, we don't control the timing. We're going to have public hearings, we're going to hear it from the public, and there may be more than one public hearing, it may span over several meetings. That all depends on the input we get from the public. So, and the consultants know that. The RFP was a little bit ambitious. They wanted a timeline for everything to be done by the end of this year. But when you're dealing with environmental review, secret analysis, they can't really control that. They can do their best effort in making sure they turn around information, but the main thing with this is to hear from the public, and listen to the public, and put forward something that can actually be received.
But you mentioned, the Regeneron, and this is in some ways similar to the Regeneron rezoning, because that took many years, and the town was very careful and methodical and focused, and as a result of all the delays, which sometimes was frustrating, because it took such a long time, we came up with a really good plan, and if this is done, this is probably the most significant rezone, I think, in years. But I just am sort of just curious, maybe could you just, for people watching this, if you could just give us just like a little
But
brief.
one more, Paul, and then we can do all this discussion, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to bring closure to the actual agenda item. And is this board now authorizing Garrett to contact BFJ and ask for them to submit a proposed contract?
Yes,
Yes.
Second.
yes.
Right. And then we will put
Aye.
this on the meeting
Aye.
for February 12th.
It's
And,
not a vote.
what's that?
I was just about to say.
It wasn't a vote.
Okay.
Well, he was just doing a straw vote, if you will.
Straw
vote.
Straw,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
but
Okay, so thank you for that. I understand. And Supervisor, to answer your question, an update as far as the stormwater studies that are ongoing. The engineering firm Arcadis is working very closely with the engineering department, and they are building on the prior flooding analysis that was done, and they are looking at a 100-year mitigation infrastructure improvement project for the Hartsdale Brook.
Not that it
And,
would take 100 years, but it would be, it would
It's a
deal with
mitigation that
100-year
would be able to
storms.
absorb the impacts of a 100-year storm. Hopefully, on a 5-year implementation track, I think we'll call it.
please,
Okay.
you would see
And,
it.
and that's, yeah, the Arcadis is very active, and engineering department's working closely. I've actually stepped aside from that process, and, because it's very engineering focused, but I know they're on there meeting with Arcadis twice a month, and with the FEMA folks, so they're making progress, and,
Yeah, and just so that, it sounds great, 100-year storm, most municipalities, their stormwater supply systems are designed for a 25-year storm, so this is much better than that. But for the major storms that we've had, I don't want to give unrealistic expectations. A 100-year system would not prevent flooding from those types of events, those fairly rare but increasingly common events where we get 700-year storms and 500-year storms occurring.
This will-
This is going to be an
yeah.
improvement for more typical storms, but unfortunately, to build a 700-year system, we would have to do that all the way to the river. And we don't
Right.
have jurisdiction over that.
This will mitigate the bulk, the flooding from the bulk of the storms. And I use the word mitigate purposefully because it will not necessarily solve, but mitigate. For instance, last year, back to back practically, we had 2 storms that within 45 minutes to an hour dropped 2 inches of rain, and no system can absorb, then on ground that was already saturated, and no system can deal with that amount of water all at once. So just fair warning. I'd like to take this moment to commend the commissioner and commend the committee because you did a fantastic job. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Yes.
When do you think that study will be, complete and, the flood mitigation recommendations?
2026.
Okay. So
Thank you.
So this is really good coordination, this whole timing of everything.
Absolutely.
That's what he's
And then
good
the
at.
tra-
And the committee members were very, very thoughtful. They came to the meeting, having done their homework, and it was really reassuring to see the level of the discussion, not just the fact that they were discussing Four Corners, but the level of detail that they were talking about, and that's how we got such good candidates.
And the traffic.
For us to interview.
Besides flooding, we also have a traffic issue for the Four Corners. So, we were looking a number of years ago at the possibility of having an extra lane, the town bought some land to possibly eventually widen West Hartsdale Avenue, heading to Central Avenue. So is that something that the committee is also, working on?
Yeah, there's so many variables with the Four Corners. The 2 properties that the town now owns on West Hartsdale Avenue, that's beneficial, and it's beneficial with the respect to control and Four Corners redevelopment. The dynamic of one corner having the parking district there, is there some sort of significant partnership that could arise to really catalyze that whole parking situation and make it more sustainable. course, we know the flooding, the traffic. We've got a TAP grant that's nearing final design, and that's looking like a 2026 build.
And
but
that's the grant for the length of East Hartsdale Ave and
It's improvements along all of East Hartsdale Avenue, curb bump outs, signal upgrades, a sidewalk up West Hartsdale Avenue. That's a major dynamic that's going to influence the Four Corners. And as you mentioned, the prospect for developers to make public improvements. Is there an opportunity to widen a lane? So many curb cuts down there. Redevelopment should have less curb cuts, make more orderly the traffic flow in the area. So there's just so much opportunity, and there are many moving parts, many challenges, but I feel like we're taking all the right steps. We approved the plan. We got the grant to do the zoning, and we're going to keep the public informed, and we've got your support, so I feel like we're going to get it done.
Fantastic. It's really
Thanks
I'd
again.
really like to challenge you, the planner, if this is the site, because they also have to make sure that the fire department can get its rigs out and through that Four Corners area. One of the possibilities that we discussed way back was being able to go around this development, going straight out of the firehouse and going around the development so they don't actually go to the intersection of Four Corners. See if that's possible. I mean, there's so many different possibilities, but that's why we're hiring a consultant, so we don't have to guess.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask a question now that you made me think of. Vis-a-vis the fire department, if they're using East Hartsdale Ave, we're sequencing the lights for traffic mitigation. But if there's a fire, will those lights be responsive to enabling the fire trucks to make their way down East Hartsdale Avenue with speed, because the lights will then respond to those fire trucks?
I know the signals have that capacity, so it's really just a coordination aspect, and Chief Masita will be heavily involved as a stakeholder, as will his district, in the Four Corners process. But now that to your question, it reminds me to make sure that our TAP grant East Hartsdale Avenue engineers are communicating with the fire department and our police to make sure that there's priority given in the situations where it's needed. And I know the technology's there, so.
You're right. Okay, thank you.
And Chief Masada is very detail oriented, and I think he'll be on top of this. I don't think we have to worry.
Right. Okay.
Okay. This is
Thank
great.
Thanks
Thanks,
again.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you.